You know what happens when you both stop contacting each other? Something most men completely miss. They think the silence means it's over. They think whoever reaches out first loses some kind of game. But here's what's actually happening inside her mind, and this might surprise you. Around day 3 or 4 of mutual silence, something shifts for her. She goes from feeling relieved to have space to genuinely curious about why you haven't reached out. That curiosity turns into something else. She starts wondering if maybe she misread your interest, if maybe you weren't as into her as she thought. And that question mark in her mind? That's where the entire dynamic flips. Because here's the truth most men don't understand. When you both go silent, you're not just waiting each other out. You're in a psychological standoff where whoever truly has options and a full life wins by default. Not because they played some game, but because they genuinely weren't sitting around obsessing. This video breaks down exactly what's going on in her psychology during this silence, why day 3 to 5 is the critical window, and how you position yourself to come out of this with your value intact. No manipulation, just understanding what's actually happening so you can make the right move. Now, before we go further, let me be clear about something. This video isn't about playing games or manipulating anyone into chasing you. It's not about toxic power dynamics or withholding affection to punish someone. That's not what this is. This is about understanding the psychology of what happens when two people enter mutual silence. Because here's what most dating advice gets wrong. They treat all silence the same. One-sided no contact, ghosting, mutual silence. They lump it all together. But the psychology of mutual silence is completely different. When you both go quiet, you're in a psychological standoff where neither person has an information advantage. And that creates a unique dynamic that most men don't understand. So let's break down exactly what's happening in this situation, starting with the most important question. What is she actually thinking during this silence? Here's the problem most men face in this situation. When you both go silent, you don't actually know what it means. Is she waiting for you to reach out? Has she already moved on? Is this a test? Is she genuinely busy? You're stuck in this loop of uncertainty, and that uncertainty is paralyzing. Ask yourself this: how many times have you checked your phone today hoping to see her name? How many times have you typed out a message and then deleted it? That right there is the trap. Because that behavior, that constant checking and second-guessing, that's coming from a place of scarcity. And even though she can't see you doing it, she can feel the energy of it. Here's why mutual silence creates this paralysis. When you're the one doing no contact, you have control. You made a decision. You're executing a strategy. But when you're both silent, nobody made a decision. You're both just waiting. And in that waiting period, most men start projecting. They assume she's moved on. They assume she doesn't care. They assume the worst. And here's what happens. Most men break the silence out of anxiety, not strategy. They text because the uncertainty becomes unbearable. They convince themselves they're being mature by reaching out first. But what they're actually doing is cracking under the psychological pressure. And the moment they do that, they signal to her that they were the one who couldn't handle the standoff, that they needed validation more than she did. So here's what we're going to cover. First, what's happening in her psychology hour by hour during the silence. Second, why day 3 to 5 is the critical window where everything shifts. Third, the exact power dynamic at play and who actually wins. Fourth, when breaking the silence is strategic versus desperate. And fifth, what you should be doing during this silence that positions you correctly. By the end, you'll know exactly how to handle mutual silence without losing your dignity or your value. Let's break it down. Let's start with what's actually going on in her mind while you're both silent. And this is going to be more nuanced than you think. Days 1 and 2, she's usually feeling relieved. Finally, some breathing room. If there was any tension before the silence started, she's using this time to decompress. She's not thinking about you constantly. She's catching up with friends, focusing on work, living her life. And here's the key part. She assumes you're doing the same. In her mind, you're both just taking space. No big deal. But around day 3, something interesting starts to happen. The relief phase ends, and curiosity begins. She starts wondering why you haven't reached out. Not in a desperate way. More like a subtle question in the back of her mind. Usually he would have texted by now. It's not that she misses you yet. It's that the pattern broke. And humans notice pattern breaks. Day 4, that curiosity intensifies. This is where that shift I mentioned earlier really kicks in. She might check your social media. She might mention you to a friend. And the question in her mind evolves from, why hasn't he texted? To, is he even thinking about me? This is subtle, but critical. Her mental frame is starting to shift from, we're taking space, to, wait, maybe he's not as interested as I thought. By day 5, if you still haven't reached out and she hasn't either, her ego gets involved. Women won't usually admit this, but when a man doesn't chase, it triggers a question she doesn't like asking herself. Did I overestimate his interest? This isn't about wanting you back necessarily. This is about her needing to know that she still has your attention, that you were, in fact, invested. Days 6 and 7, one of two things happens. Either she reaches out because the uncertainty became uncomfortable, or she starts genuinely detaching. And here's how you can tell the difference. If she reaches out with something casual and low investment, like sending a meme or a "this reminded me of you" message, she's testing. She wants to see if you're still interested without admitting she wants to know. But if she's genuinely detached, you won't hear anything. She's moved on mentally, and the silence has become permanent. Now let's talk about why mutual silence creates such a unique power dynamic. And this is where game theory comes in. In a one-sided no-contact situation, one person has all the information advantage. They know they're not reaching out. They made a conscious decision. They're in control. But in mutual silence, both people are in the dark. Neither of you knows if the other person is genuinely moving on or strategically waiting. You don't know if she's dating someone else or sitting at home hoping you'll text. She doesn't know if you're busy building your life or checking your phone every hour. That information symmetry changes everything. Here's the brutal truth about standoffs. In any standoff, the person who breaks first usually signals they had less power to hold out. It's not about morality. It's not about maturity. It's pure game theory. Whoever needs the interaction more will crack first. And the moment you crack, you reveal your hand. You show that your tolerance for uncertainty was lower than hers, that your need for resolution was stronger. Think about it like this. If you break the silence on day 3 because the anxiety is killing you, what have you communicated? You've communicated that you couldn't handle 3 days without contact, that your mental state was dependent on hearing from her, that you don't have enough going on in your life to be genuinely occupied. And she reads all of that, even if she's not consciously analyzing it. But here's where it gets interesting. This dynamic only holds if both people are actually playing the same game. If you're sitting there strategizing about when to text while she's genuinely detached and focused on other things, you've already lost. Because the real power in mutual silence doesn't come from who holds out longer. It comes from who's actually living their life versus who's pretending to be busy while secretly obsessing. The man who checks his phone once a day because he's genuinely engaged in building something, who has other options, who's surrounded by people, that man has real power. The man who's forcing himself not to text while spending hours analyzing her last Instagram story, that man has zero power. Even if he waits 2 weeks to reach out, the energy is wrong. And here's the part most men miss. She can feel that energy difference, not literally, but through the subtle signals. How quickly you respond when she eventually reaches out, the tone of your message, whether you seem relieved or casual. Women are incredibly tuned into these micro-signals. They can sense desperation even when you're trying to hide it. So knowing all of this, here's your strategic response framework. And it all comes down to one core principle. Never break the silence from a place of anxiety, only from a place of genuine abundance and outcome independence. Let me break down what that actually means. If you're thinking about texting her because the uncertainty is eating at you, don't. If you're hoping a text will give you validation that she still cares, don't. If you're trying to win the standoff by proving you can hold out longer, you're still operating from scarcity. Because trying to prove you don't care is just another form of caring too much. Here's the decision criteria for whether to break the silence. Ask yourself, am I genuinely okay with either outcome? If she responds positively, great. If she doesn't respond at all, am I still good? If the answer is no, if you're attached to getting a certain response, you're not ready to reach out. Your energy will give it away. So what should you be doing during the silence? Living your actual life. Not performing for her potential attention. Not posting strategically on social media hoping she'll see. Actually building something. Actually being around other people. Actually having options. Because here's the thing, you can't fake this. You can try to act like you don't care, but if you're checking her stories, if you're analyzing her posts, if you're waiting for her to reach out, she'll sense it. The abundance you need isn't something you project. It's something you have. And the only way to have it is to genuinely fill your life with other things. Other people, other goals, other interests. When she becomes one option among many, not the only option, your entire energy shifts. And that shift is what makes the difference. Now, if you decide to break the silence strategically, here's how. Your message needs to be casual, low investment, and assumptive of good vibes. No, hey, how have you been? That signals you've been thinking about her for days. No, I miss you. That's desperate. Something like, saw this and thought you'd find it funny with a meme or article, or hope you're doing well, and then move on. The key is that your message doesn't require a specific response. You're not fishing for validation. And when she responds, here's how you read it. If she's genuinely re-engaged, she'll match or exceed your energy. She'll actually engage with what you sent. She'll ask questions. She'll open conversation threads. If she's just responding to be polite or to keep you as an option, her responses will be short and don't create openings. Haha, yeah, or thanks you too. That tells you everything. She's not interested in re-engaging. She's just being polite. Now here's the uncomfortable truth about why most men still lose this game, even when they know all of this. And this is where we separate theory from reality. The biggest reason men lose mutual silence standoffs is simple. They break from anxiety, not strategy. They tell themselves they're being mature or taking initiative, but what they're really doing is alleviating their own discomfort. The uncertainty becomes too much. The not knowing eats at them. And they text to make themselves feel better, not because it's the strategically correct move. Here's how this plays out. A guy will last 3 or 4 days. He'll be proud of himself for not reaching out, but the whole time, he's thinking about her constantly. He's checking her social media. He's replaying conversations in his head. He's analyzing every possible meaning of her silence. And then on day 4, he cracks. He sends that text. And the moment he does, all that forced discipline was for nothing. Because his energy during those 4 days was pure scarcity, and she's going to feel it the second she reads his message. This is what I mean when I say, you can't fake abundance. You can't white-knuckle your way through mutual silence while obsessing internally. The obsession leaks out. It shows up in how quickly you respond when she finally texts. It shows up in the tone of your messages. It shows up in how available you suddenly become. Women pick up on these patterns instantly. They might not consciously articulate it, but they feel it. The second major reason men lose is validation seeking. They're not actually okay with either outcome. They need her to want them. They need confirmation that she's still interested. And that need is a form of weakness that destroys attraction. Because the moment you need her validation, you've given her all the power. You've made your emotional state dependent on her response. And women can sense that dependency from a mile away. Think about what validation seeking looks like in practice. It's sending a text and then staring at your phone waiting for the 3 dots. It's feeling anxious when she doesn't respond within an hour. It's overanalyzing every word of her reply. It's the emotional roller coaster of relief when she responds positively and devastation when she doesn't. That whole experience is screaming scarcity. And scarcity is the opposite of attractive. The third reason is outcome attachment. Men get so focused on winning her back or making her chase that they lose sight of the bigger picture. They're playing chess while she's living her life. They're strategizing while she's out there actually meeting people and having experiences. And the irony is that the more attached you are to a specific outcome, the less likely you are to achieve it. Because that attachment creates pressure, and pressure kills authenticity. The real test of mutual silence isn't whether you can hold out longer than her. It's whether you can genuinely detach your emotional state from the outcome. Can you actually be okay if she never texts back? Can you actually move on if that's how it plays out? Because if you can't, if you're secretly holding on hoping she'll come back, you haven't won anything. You're just prolonging your own suffering while pretending to be strong. And this leads to the harsh truth that most men don't want to hear. But you need to hear it. If you're checking your phone every hour hoping she texted, if you're refreshing her Instagram to see if she posted, if you're lying awake at night wondering what she's doing, you've already lost the psychological battle. Not because you haven't texted her, but because your mental state is completely dependent on her. You're not maintaining silence out of strength. You're maintaining silence out of fear of looking desperate, which is ironically the most desperate position you can be in. Now I know how this sounds. It sounds harsh. It sounds like I'm saying, you can't care about anyone. That's not what this is about. This is about the difference between caring about someone and being emotionally held hostage by them. When your entire emotional state rises and falls based on whether she texts, when your day is ruined because she didn't respond, when you're organizing your life around the possibility of her reaching out, that's not caring. That's dependency. And dependency kills attraction faster than anything else. So ask yourself this honestly. Are you maintaining silence because you're genuinely focused on building your life, or because you're terrified of appearing weak? Are you actually okay if she never texts back? Or are you secretly counting on her to reach out eventually? Because if it's the latter, you're not in a power position. You're just pretending. And pretending is exhausting and ultimately ineffective. Now I want to hear from you. Have you been in a mutual silence standoff? Did you break first, or did she? And what happened when one of you finally reached out? Drop your experience in the comments below. I read every single comment, and I'm here to give you real advice based on your specific situation. Because here's the thing, this isn't just about one girl or one situation. This is about understanding human psychology so you stop giving your power away in relationships. It's about building the kind of life where you're genuinely abundant, not performing abundance while secretly desperate. It's about becoming the type of man who doesn't need validation from anyone because his self-worth comes from within. And if you got value from this video, if something clicked for you, do me a favor. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Not to be manipulative or play games with their relationships, but to understand the psychology of attraction at a deeper level. Because when men understand this stuff, they stop chasing, stop being needy, and start building the kind of lives that naturally attract the right people. Remember this. A man who's checking his phone every hour hasn't lost because he didn't text. He's lost because his mental state is controlled by someone else. But a man who's genuinely focused on building his life, who has options, who's outcome independent, that man is unforgettable. Not because he plays games, but because he doesn't need to. And that's the difference between pretending to be high value and actually being high value.